She's 34 years old, standing in front of the mirror, and she hears her mother's voice telling her that her hips are too wide. Her body isn't right. Her mother isn't even in the room. She's not even in the same state, but the voice is there, as clear as if it were her own, and maybe it is. Carl Jung discovered something deeply unsettling about narcissistic mothers and their daughters. The most profound destruction is the kind that leaves no visible marks. It's the kind that becomes part of who you are. There are no bruises, no broken bones, but there is a daughter who spent 34 years tearing herself down with the words her mother planted in her head. And the scariest part? She doesn't even realize she's doing it. Because when your mother is a narcissist, she doesn't need to be physically present to continue destroying you. She already lives inside of you. This video isn't about blaming your mother. It's about understanding what Jung called the poisoning of the maternal archetype, the toxic mother wound, and how this poisoning spreads invisibly, silently, mortally, affecting your femininity, your ability to nurture yourself. Every relationship you try to build, every moment you look in the mirror, over the next few minutes, you're going to see exactly how this happens. How a narcissistic mother destroys a daughter without ever laying a hand on her. And why the invisible wounds are the hardest to heal. Because you can't show these wounds to anyone. You can't go to the hospital and say, "My mother destroyed my ability to love myself." There are no X-rays to detect a poisoned feminine archetype. There are no bandages for the internalization of a toxic maternal voice that's become your cruelest inner critic. What exists is a daughter who grows up thinking she's the problem, that if she were different, better, prettier, thinner, smarter, quieter, more outgoing, less sensitive, less selfish, her mother would finally love her. And when that daughter becomes an adult and realizes that nothing she does is enough, she doesn't blame her mother. She blames herself for not being lovable. Jung said that the mother is the child's first world, the first mirror, the first universe. And when that mirror reflects back a distorted, fragmented, rejected image, something happens in the daughter's psyche. Something Jung called a wound to the self, a crack in the foundation of who you are. And from that crack is born what he identified as the false self, the defensive persona, the mask you wear to try to finally be loved. But here's the truth that no one tells you. You can spend your entire life perfecting that mask. You can become the perfect daughter, the impeccable professional, the ideal wife, the devoted mother, and even then, deep down, in that place that no one sees, you'll still hear your mother's voice saying that you're not enough, because she's not criticizing what you do. She's criticizing who you are, and you've internalized it. Let me show you how this works in practice. Emily was 6 years old when she realized there was something wrong with her. Not that anyone had said it directly, but her mother had a way of looking at her. A pause before responding. A sigh when Emily entered the room, as if the mere existence of her daughter was a burden. Emily's mother never hit her, never yelled. In fact, to outsiders, she was an exemplary mother. She took her daughter to school, packed healthy lunches, attended PTA meetings, but there was something in the way she did it all, as if she were playing a role, portraying the perfect mother. And Emily was the audience that never applauded adequately. At 7 years old, Emily won an award at school for best essay. She ran home with the certificate, her eyes shining. Her mother glanced at the paper and then at Emily and said that was good. But her cousin Ashley had won 2 awards last month, that she was very dedicated. Emily never forgot that moment. Not the physical pain, because there was no physical pain, but something died that day. Jung would say it was the moment when Emily's true self began to fragment. The moment she learned that who she was What she achieved would never be enough, because there would always be a cousin Ashley. There would always be someone better. And here's the invisible mechanism. Emily didn't think her mother was cruel. She thought she needed to try harder, that she needed to be like Ashley, that if she were good enough, her mother would finally see her. At 10 years old, Emily stopped showing her achievements, stopped expecting validation. She developed what Jung would call an adaptive persona, the daughter who doesn't bother anyone, who doesn't need attention, who's always fine. On the outside, she seemed independent, mature for her age. On the inside, she was starving for emotional sustenance. Emily's mother told her friends that her daughter was so easy to raise, that she never gave her trouble, that she barely seemed like she was home, as if that were a virtue. As if an invisible child was something to be proud of. Jung understood that when a narcissistic mother looks at her daughter, she doesn't see a separate person. She sees an extension of herself, a mirror that should reflect maternal greatness. And when the daughter fails in this function, when she dares to have her own needs, her own personality, her own existence, the narcissistic mother experiences it as a betrayal. And the punishment doesn't come in the form of violence. It comes in the form of coldness, of comparisons, of love conditioned on performance, of validation that's given and taken away unpredictably, keeping the daughter always on alert, always trying to decipher what her mother wants, always adjusting who she is to try to finally receive that love. Emily was 14 years old when she developed an eating disorder, not because her mother said she was fat. Her mother never said things directly, but she had a habit of commenting on other women, saying how that woman had let herself go, that it must be a lack of discipline, that she never allowed herself to gain weight even after pregnancy, that it was a matter of self-respect. And Emily listened and internalized, and translated that if she gained weight, she wouldn't have self-respect, that if she gained weight, she would become one of those women who had let themselves go, that if she gained weight, she wouldn't deserve love. Jung would say that Emily was incorporating her mother's shadow. The narcissistic mother hadn't integrated her own fears, her own insecurities about aging, about appearance, about worth. So she projects all of that onto her daughter, and the daughter, desperate for connection, for approval, absorbs these projections as if they were truths about herself. At 16, Emily weighed 105 pounds and wore baggy clothes to hide her body. Her mother looked at her with performative concern and asked if she was eating properly, that she didn't want her to get sick. But when Emily really tried to eat, when she sat at the table and helped herself to a second serving, her mother would comment about her appetite, warning her to watch herself, to not overdo it. It didn't matter what Emily did. Too skinny, too heavy, too quiet, too talkative, too sensitive, too cold. Always too something, always wrong. And the cruelest part? Her mother did it all with a smile, with apparent concern, with conditioned love that seemed like real love, until you realized it always came with an invisible knife. This is destruction without visible scars. It's not a scream, it's a sigh. It's not a slap, it's a look. It's not direct rejection, it's validation, always mixed with poison. And the daughter grows up believing this is the taste of love. Emily left home at 22 to go to college in another city. She thought that by physically distancing herself from her mother, she would finally be free. Little did she know, she had already taken her mother with her, inside her own head. In her first semester, Emily met Lucas. He was kind, attentive, and seemed genuinely interested in her. And for the first time, Emily felt like someone saw her, that someone liked her, not for what she did, but for who she was. And it was terrifying. Because when you grow up believing that love is something you have to earn through perfect performance, when someone offers you love simply because you exist, your mind doesn't know how to process it. Carl Jung would call this an archetypal conflict. Emily's true self wanted to accept the love. But the false self, the one built to survive her narcissistic mother, whispered that he would abandon her, that as soon as he really got to know her, he'd see she wasn't worth it, that she needed to be perfect, or he would leave. Emily started sabotaging the relationship. She tested Lucas constantly, created problems where there were none, interpreted neutral gestures as rejection because she was waiting for the other mother to appear. Waiting for the moment when Lucas would look at her with that expression her mother had, disappointment disguised as love. And when Lucas, confused and exhausted, finally ended the relationship, Emily wasn't surprised. She felt confirmed. She knew it. She wasn't worthy of love. She ruined everything, just like her mother always implied. But Emily's mother never said it directly. That's the cruel genius of the narcissistic mother. She operates through insinuations, through comparisons, through conditional love. She destroys you while smiling at you. And then, when you're shattered, you can't even explain what happened, because there's no evidence, no visible marks. Carl Jung understood that the maternal archetype is the most powerful in the human psyche. When it's healthy, it nurtures, it protects, it mirrors, it validates. The daughter grows up knowing she is loved simply for existing, that her emotions are valid, that she has the right to take up space, that she is enough. But when the maternal archetype is poisoned by narcissism, it does the opposite. It devours. It fragments. It teaches the daughter that she only has value when she serves the mother's purposes, that her emotions are inconvenient, that she needs to be small, invisible, perfect, that she will never, ever be enough. And this teaching becomes the daughter's inner voice, the internal critic that accompanies her throughout her life, the feeling of inadequacy that no achievement can erase, the emotional hole that no relationship can fill, because the hole isn't about what you do, it's about who you are, and you've learned that who you are does not deserve love. Emily was 28 when she finally went to therapy, not because she wanted to, but because she had a panic attack at work, and the doctor suggested it might be anxiety, that maybe she needed to talk to someone. In her first session, the therapist asked about her family. Emily said her mother was great, that she was always very devoted to her, that she had a privileged childhood, that she had no reason to complain. The therapist noted something and asked how Emily felt when she talked to her mother. Emily paused. No one had ever asked that. How did she feel? She felt tired, a tension in her stomach, the need to rehearse her words before speaking, the fear of saying the wrong thing and seeing that look of disappointment. But out loud, Emily said she felt normal. It took 6 months of therapy for Emily to be able to tell the truth, that she felt small, that she felt wrong, that she felt like nothing she did was enough. And the worst part was, her mother didn't even have to say anything. It was just the way she looked at her, like she was a walking disappointment. And when Emily finally said it out loud, when she allowed that truth to exist outside her own head, she cried, not a delicate tear, but the kind of cry that comes from the bottom of your body. The kind of cry of someone who has spent decades holding on to something too heavy. The therapist said something that changed everything, that her mother didn't need to hit her to hurt her, that emotional abuse is real, and that invisible wounds are as deep as the visible ones. Emily had never thought of her mother as abusive. Abuse was something that happened in violent, dysfunctional, poor families, not in middle-class homes with mothers who went to PTA meetings and packed healthy lunches. But Carl Jung understood something that society is reluctant to accept. You can be destroyed by someone who never laid a hand on you. You can carry trauma from a childhood that, from the outside, seemed perfectly normal. Because what destroys you isn't just what happens, it's what doesn't happen, the validation that never came, the unconditional love that was replaced by transactional love, the healthy mirroring that was exchanged for criticism disguised as care. And the daughter of a narcissistic mother grows up thinking the problem is her, that if she were less sensitive, if she didn't take everything so seriously, if she were more grateful, stronger, more mature, she wouldn't feel this way. But the problem was never the daughter. The problem is that she was raised by someone incapable of loving her for who she is. And now, as an adult, she needs to learn something that should have been taught in childhood, that she is worthy of love. Not for being perfect, but for simply existing. Emily is 34 now. She's still in therapy. Some days are easier. Other days, she still hears her mother's voice in her head, criticizing, comparing, diminishing. But now she recognizes that voice. She knows it's not the truth. It's just the echo of a poisoned archetype. She's learning to separate who she really is from what her mother projected onto her. She's learning that feeling isn't weakness, that having needs isn't selfishness, that taking up space isn't arrogance. She's slowly, painfully reconstructing the self that was fragmented before it even had a chance to fully form. And most importantly, she's breaking the cycle. Because Carl Jung showed that the unintegrated shadow gets passed down generation after generation. Emily's mother was probably also the daughter of a narcissistic mother. She too internalized that love is conditional. She too learned to measure worth through performance. But Emily decided the cycle ends with her. Hold on tight, because we haven't gotten to the most important part yet. The part about how these invisible wounds manifest in adulthood in ways you'd never connect to your mother. Keep everything you just read in mind, because the next revelations will make it all make even more sense. There are patterns that appear in the lives of daughters of narcissistic mothers, patterns so consistent that Carl Jung would immediately recognize them as symptoms of a wounded maternal archetype. And the most disturbing thing is that most of these women don't even realize the connection. They think the problems are personal flaws, character defects, individual weaknesses, but they're not. They're invisible scars from maternal destruction. First manifestation, the inability to receive compliments. Someone tells you that you did a good job, and your first reaction isn't gratitude. It's distrust, questioning what this person wants from you, or you immediately minimize it, saying it was nothing, that anyone could do it. Or worse, you list everything you did wrong, all the ways it could have been better. Carl Jung would say, that's the internalized maternal voice. The narcissistic mother never allowed you to receive pure, uncontaminated validation. There was always a but. There was always a comparison. There was always something wrong. To balance something right. So now, as an adult, you do it to yourself automatically. You've become your own narcissistic mother. Second manifestation, relationships where you always give more than you receive. You empty yourself, trying to fill the other person. You anticipate needs, you adapt, you become small to fit in the space that's left over. And when someone asks what you want, you genuinely don't know how to answer, because you were trained since childhood. Not to have needs, not to take up emotional space, to exist in service of the other person. Carl Jung would call this identification with the inferior function. You've developed an extraordinary ability to read and serve others, but you've completely lost connection with your own center, with your own true self. And when you finally leave a relationship like that, exhausted, destroyed, you don't think you were with someone who exploited you. You think you weren't good enough, that you should have done more. The mother's voice again, saying the problem was always you. Third manifestation, emotional hypervigilance. You walk into a room and you immediately scan the mood of the people. You detect micro-expressions, subtle changes in tone, unspoken tensions, and you adjust your behavior to harmonize, to appease, to ensure that no one feels uncomfortable. This isn't healthy empathy, it's a survival mechanism. You develop to navigate the unpredictable mood of a narcissistic mother. You learned that your safety depended on deciphering your mother's emotional state before she exploded, or worse, before she became cold, distant, punishing you with emotional absence. Carl Jung understood that children in emotionally dangerous environments develop an almost paranormal sensitivity. But that sensitivity comes at a price. You live on constant alert. You never completely relax. And you carry a background anxiety that you can't explain, because it's not connected to any real danger in the present. It's connected to the invisible dangers of your childhood. Fourth manifestation, paralyzing perfectionism. You can't start project because they already need to be perfect in your head. You can't finish projects because they're never good enough. And when you finally deliver something, you spend days rehashing everything you could have done differently. The narcissistic mother taught you that you only have worth when your performance is impeccable, and even then she always found something wrong. So you internalized an impossible measuring stick. And now you paralyze yourself, trying to reach a standard that was designed to keep you always failing. Fifth manifestation, and this is crucial, extreme difficulty in trusting your own perception of reality. You experience something that hurts you, but before validating your own pain, you question if you're exaggerating, if you're too sensitive, if you're not understanding it correctly. Carl Jung would have a name for this: dissociation from the self. The narcissistic mother taught you, through years of subtle gaslighting, that your perception isn't reliable, that your feelings are exaggerated, that your memory is wrong. And now, as an adult, you don't trust yourself. You always seek external validation before believing in your own experience. And here's the most disturbing twist that Carl Jung revealed: the more invisible the destruction, the harder it is to heal, because you don't have evidence. You can't point to a specific moment and say, that's where they broke you. It was an accumulation of 1,000 little deaths, 1,000 moments of not being seen, 1,000 times when your joy was minimized, your pain was invalidated, your existence was treated as an inconvenience. How do you heal from something that no one besides you recognizes as trauma? Brittany was 29 years old when she realized she had never made an important decision on her own. Marriage, she chose the college her mother approved of. Career, she followed the path her mother validated. Even the apartment where she lived had been chosen with her mother's opinion as the deciding factor. And the scariest thing, Brittany thought this was normal. She thought it was a sign of a close relationship between mother and daughter. Only when the therapist asked her what she wanted did Brittany realize something alarming. She didn't know. She genuinely didn't know what she wanted, separate from what her mother wanted for her. Carl Jung would say that Brittany's self was never allowed to individuate, to separate from her mother and become an autonomous being. The narcissistic mother doesn't allow separation. She experiences the daughter's individuation as abandonment, as betrayal. So she subtly punishes every attempt by her daughter to become independent, and the daughter learns that if she separates, she loses love, that if she's herself, she's alone. So she chooses to remain fused, entangled, lost in the maternal psyche. She chooses not to exist completely, if it means maintaining some form of connection with her mother. But here's the brutal truth. That's not real connection. It's toxic symbiosis. And you're not maintaining love. You're maintaining the illusion that if you're small enough, obedient enough, perfect enough, one day you'll receive the unconditional love that you should have received from the beginning. You're waiting for something that's never going to come because your narcissistic mother isn't capable of giving it. Not because you don't deserve it, but because she doesn't have it to give. She herself is empty. She herself is fragmented. She herself never integrated her own shadow, never healed her own wounds. And this perception, this understanding that your mother is limited, that she's never going to give you what you need, is simultaneously liberating and devastating. Because it means you need to stop waiting. You need to stop trying. You need to accept that you were raised by someone emotionally incapable of being the mother you needed. And then, you need to do something incredibly difficult. You need to give yourself what she never gave you. You need to become your own good enough mother. You need to validate your own emotions. You need to nurture your own self. You need to say to that wounded inner child that you see her, that you believe her, that she's not exaggerating, that the pain is real, and that she has always been enough. This is what Carl Jung called internal reparenting, and it's one of the most difficult psychological tasks there is, because you're fighting against decades of programming, against a maternal voice, internalized, that's etched so deeply that it feels like your own voice. But it's possible. It is absolutely possible. You've just understood the invisible mechanisms through which narcissistic mothers destroy their daughters. You've seen how the wound forms, how it manifests, how it perpetuates. This information that you've received in the last few minutes isn't easy to find, because most mental health professionals haven't been trained to recognize subtle emotional abuse. Society still operates with the idea that if there's no physical violence, there's no real abuse. But you know different now, and this knowledge has the power to change your life. The super thanks button down there isn't just financial support for this channel. It's you saying, this truth about narcissistic mothers needs to be known. It's you helping to guarantee that more videos like this are made, that more daughters discover that the problem was never them. When you click that golden heart, you're breaking the silence around a type of trauma that society still hesitates to recognize. You're not just a spectator. You are a conscious survivor, helping to illuminate the path for others who are still in the darkness. Now let me show you what recovery really looks like. Not the romanticized version, but the true one. Recovery isn't linear. It's not you waking up one day cured, free from the maternal voice and completely individuated. It's a long, painful process, full of setbacks. It's you having a good day, feeling strong, and then your mother calls, and with a simple, apparently innocuous phrase, throws you right back into that place of a little kid, desperately trying to be good enough. Recovery is learning to recognize that feeling. Name it. Say that it's the maternal complex being activated, that this isn't the truth about who you are, that it's an old pattern trying to repeat itself. It's you practicing separating the voice of the internalized mother from your own voice. And in the beginning, you can't even distinguish the two. But with time, with practice, with therapy, you start to notice when you criticize yourself cruelly, when you minimize your achievements, when you feel small and inadequate, you stop and ask, whose voice is this? And you realize it's hers, not mine. And then you practice responding differently. You practice saying, no, I don't accept this narrative. I did a good job. I deserve to occupy space. I am enough. exactly as I am. In the beginning, you don't believe these words. You say them mechanically, there's like an exercise, but Jung understood something profound about the psyche. Conscious repetition creates new neural patterns. You're literally reconfiguring your mind, creating new paths that don't go through maternal approval. Recovery also means establishing boundaries, and that is terrifying for a daughter of a narcissistic mother, because you were taught that boundaries are selfishness, that saying no is cruelty, that taking care of yourself is abandoning your mother. But boundaries aren't walls. They're healthy definitions of where you end and the other person begins. They're you saying, I'm not going to absorb your projections anymore. I'm not going to carry your unintegrated shadow anymore. I'm not going to diminish myself so that you feel bigger. And when you start establishing boundaries, your narcissistic mother will intensify. She'll accuse you of being ungrateful, selfish, cold. She'll use guilt, manipulation, victimhood. She'll make you look like the villain for finally choosing to take care of yourself. And here is the crucial test. Can you maintain the boundary? Even when she's making you feel like the worst person in the world, can you tolerate the guilt, the anxiety, the fear of abandonment, and still say no? This boundary remains, because if you can do that, you're starting to individuate for real. You're choosing your true self instead of maternal approval, and that's the hardest and most liberating choice you'll make. Ashley made that choice at 31. She told her mother that she wasn't going to Sunday brunch every week anymore, that she needed space. Her mother responded by asking if, after everything she had done for her, she was abandoning her like this, that she knew Ashley was selfish, that she always had been. Ashley felt the familiar stab of guilt. She felt the overwhelming urge to go back, to apologize, to diminish herself. But she took a deep breath and said that she wasn't abandoning her mother, that she was creating a healthy balance, and that she hoped she could respect that. Her mother hung up the phone. She didn't speak to Ashley for 3 weeks. And those 3 weeks were psychological torture for Ashley. She almost called 1,000 times, almost gave in, almost gave up on herself to get her mother back, but she didn't give in. And you know what happened? Nothing catastrophic. Her mother eventually called back as if nothing had happened. And Ashley realized something fundamental. Her mother's love had always been conditioned on control. When she maintained the boundary, when she didn't bend, the punishment came in the form of temporary abandonment. But she survived, and she realized that she could live without her mother's approval. That was true individuation. It wasn't stopping loving her mother, it was stopping sacrificing herself in the hope of being loved back. Jung said that the goal of individuation isn't perfection, it's wholeness. It's integrating all the parts of who you are, including the parts that were rejected, repressed, shamed. It's recovering the shadow that you hid to try to be the perfect daughter. For daughters of narcissistic mothers, this means allowing yourself to be imperfect, allowing yourself to have needs, allowing yourself to occupy space, allowing yourself to feel anger towards your mother without paralyzing guilt. Allow yourself to acknowledge it. She hurt me, and the pain I feel is valid. And I deserve to heal, even if she never acknowledges what she did. Because here's the ultimate truth. You don't need your mother to validate your pain for it to be real. You don't need her to admit what she did for you to heal. You don't need her acknowledgement to move forward. You can heal independently of her. You can become whole even if she remains fragmented. You can break the cycle even if she continues repeating the patterns. And when you have children, or when you simply relate to people in general, you can choose differently. You can validate emotions. You can offer unconditional love. You can see people as separate beings, not as extensions of yourself. You can do what your mother couldn't, love without devouring. It's about loving them for who they are. not who you need them to be. That's the ultimate victory over a narcissistic mother. It's not revenge. It's not necessarily cutting contact. It's simply refusing to pass on the poison. It's saying, the cycle ends with me. This is your moment to rewrite the story. And if you've made it this far, if you recognized your story in this video, I want you to know something. It wasn't your fault. The child you were did the best she could with the resources she had. You developed brilliant yet painful survival mechanisms. You are stronger than you imagine. So much stronger. And now, as an adult, you have a choice you didn't have as a child. You can choose to heal. You can choose to seek therapy. You can choose to do the difficult work of separating who you really are from your mother's projections. You can choose to become the good enough mother for yourself. It's not going to be easy. It's going to hurt. There will be days when you'll want to give up, when it'll seem easier to just accept the role you were given, to remain the good daughter and small, invisible, the perfect daughter she always wanted. But you're not that child anymore. You have power now. You have a choice, and choosing yourself, choosing your true self, choosing your individuation, as Carl Jung would say, is the most courageous and the most necessary act you can take. It's about prioritizing your well-being, even when it feels selfish. The invisible wounds your mother left are real, but healing is also possible, and you deserve that healing. Not because you did something extraordinary, but because you exist. And existing is enough. You are worthy of love and healing simply because you are you. Now tell me one thing in the comments. Which of these invisible manifestations did you recognize in yourself? The inability to receive compliments, the unbalanced relationships, the emotional hypervigilance, the paralyzing perfectionism, or the difficulty trusting your own perception? Be specific, because when we name these wounds and when we bring them to light, they start to lose power over us. Comment down below. It's time to break the silence and start your journey towards healing.